And we're live! Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host, as usual, the Dungeon Master and Adventurer Vibe. So, today, I'm just going to do another short little stream this morning, telling you guys another story from my times with Dungeons & Dragons. Today, we're going to be continuing my stories from my time with Out of the Abyss. This last time, I told you guys stories in regards to my paladin character, Hans. And today I'll be telling you guys about my second character in Out of the Abyss. This one was pretty much kind of basically the total opposite of Hans. Hans was like, this very kind paladin individual. My second character was actually one of my first times playing a lawful evil character, which that in itself is a fun topic to get into because that's always something interesting to delve into in D&D is when you have a non-evil party but have an evil party member. It's a very tricky thing to properly balance, especially if both the player playing him is being isn't watching themselves too well, and the DM as well isn't doing much to kind of help guide direction. That said, at some point, that's really not the DM's job to do that. You build that character, make that character work. um, but I feel like I did this one pretty well. So take into account here, this particular character was lawful evil. Yes, so they were all in all an evil character. They have these evil aspirations and stuff. But as far as their place in this campaign, they were just like the other players. They were stuck in the Underdark. Their goals were not in the Underdark. They didn't want to be there just like the players. They were stuck. So they became allies through this mutual goal of needing to escape. As such, he took it upon himself to not, to actually bring any harm to the party, because that would only cause more issue for himself. The more evil aspect would come definitely later down the road with this character, and we will get into that today. As well as the way he basically handled certain encounters, whereas Draven, or only, as I said last time, our only character to survive the entire campaign, was he. Oh, if I did mention before, Draven was in fact also a paladin. He was a paladin of one of the newer oaths, the Oath of Redemption. I say newer, that's from Xanathar's Guide, which has been out for a while. One of the better books, in my opinion, as far as like supplement material goes. Lots of good stuff in Xanathar's Guide, at least as far as player characters go. I would say some of the other supplement books, such as Mordenkainen's and Tasha's, has a lot more to offer for the DM side of things. But as far as like the player side of things, Xanathar's Guide, very nice, and it does have actually really good material for the DM as well. But that's not today's topic. Well, I guess it kind of is. Basically, anything D&D is the topic here. I just use the stories to kind of help guide the focus. Any case, so yes, this character. He was lawful evil. He was a warlock. Patron was the Undying, and he was a Githyanki. So all in all, truth be told, very standard Githyanki character, to be frank. As if you know about Githyanki, they are basically your weird, basically space people of D&D. They kind of sit in this weird spot. I actually don't see them being used very often in campaign settings, which is fair enough, I would say, because there's such an odd race that exists in such a specific place that no one really ventures too much in their adventures. They exist within the astral plane, which is space but not space. It's weird. The astral plane's weird. So basically Githyanki are one of two types of Gith. You got your Githzerai, which are your monks, super chill dudes, and then you Githyanki, who are badass space pirates, basically, with silver swords. And by and large, typically evil. They are allies with Tiamat and ride red dragons as well. Obviously, I did not have a dragon, but no, yeah. So my guy, his name was Nazgul. Yes, named after your ring raves from Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. But I was a bit on the nose of that one. But yeah, so he was patron of the Undying, his patron being the Githyanki's leader, the Lich Queen. So that brings us to, that's who he was. if I recall correctly, I gave him like a southern accent for some reason, like a like a southern businessman type accent. I don't know why I did that. I don't do accents much in games, and for some reason I decided to do that. If I'm to be honest, I think it was because about that time was when that new season Critical Role started, and so I had the funny idea of a warlock with a southern draw in my head. So yeah, I'll admit I stole that a bit, but it wasn't much of a aspect of him. It was just something to kind of help differentiate the character, I guess. Anywho, so yeah, so the characters meet him. It was shortly after Hans's death. They're traveling along. They were heading to Neverlight Grove. Everlight. It's one of those two. I think it's Everlight. Which was a very interesting spot and setting that we did end up venturing to a few times. We're traveling there to help return one of our NPC buddies, a small myconoid named Stool, named after kind of a play on a toadstool, being what some people like to call mushrooms. If you don't know, myconoids are the sentient mushroom people who typically live in the Underdark. Stool being a very small and young one. Party loved him, protected him very, very thoroughly. He did survive. I've actually read a bunch of other stories online in which Stool does not actually make it, or they don't even bring Stool with them, but we did. Which was actually helpful, because he did in fact have an ability that allowed him to produce spores that made characters able to talk to each other even if they didn't share a language, which is very handy and proved to be very handy in this particular campaign, as all player characters are always by standard able to speak Common, unless for some reason you and the DM decide they don't. In the Underdark, Common is not the standard language, so as such we ran into a lot of characters who did not actually speak a language any of us knew, as none of our characters were from the Underdark either. So it was very helpful to have. So anyhow, that's where the party was going. Along the way, they find someone knocked out on the ground there, and that would be Nazgul, who has just arrived in the Underdark after the astral vessel he was aboard crashed through a portal and flung him into the Underdark, him being the only surviving member of the crew. He very quickly realizes the situation he's in, and after helping the party fight off some of the Drow, who are still at this point incessantly chasing them down, joins up the party in the mutual interest of escaping the Underdark. As I said before, this was after Hans's death, but before his first resurrection. So at this point, the Drow from the prison are still hunting the party. So the party begins their travels, accompanied by now with Nazgul, as well as I mentioned before, Hans did not die alone that time. He did die with a fighter as well. And as it happens, their character apparently had a similar idea to me, as they decided to play a necromancer who was lawful evil. So as you can imagine, him and Nazgul actually became pretty good friends along their journeys. So the party travels along. All in all, I'd say our path after they met up, their travel to Everlight Grove wasn't too eventful. Plenty of random encounters with Drow and spiders and such, but all in all, nothing as deadly as some of our previous encounters. We're starting to get to the point of a character's progression where they seem a bit more competent. You know, I believe we had hit level 5 by this time, which is really a big stepping stone for a character in D&D. Excuse me, having some tea as usual. So we travel to Everlight Grove. Once there, we meet up with some of the other myconoids and discover that there was in fact a bit of a rift in their society at the moment. This rift being caused by, of course, demon lords. The main one being Zuggtmoy. Now, Zuggtmoy became a very interesting adversary of ours during this adventure. Zuggtmoy is a demon lord, demon prince, princess, whatever, of fungus and rot. So, of course, a wonderful target of hers in the Underdark was, of course, Everlight Grove, home of the myconoids, a fungal mushroom people. With her own demonic spores, she was able to corrupt the minds and even control a good population of these myconoids. And through their powers and her own, they were able to actually possess other sentient creatures as well, basically turning them into those fungal zombies from Last of Us. It's literally basically what happened to them, but a bit more of a hive mind situation. So we travel there, and we speak with some of the myconoids there who are acting very strange and creepy. We didn't know about the Demon Lord's presence at this time. We're just trying to figure out what's going on. So we are asked to travel to the central portion of this place. So we travel there, but as we start to see things are pretty weird and shaky, we decide to actually shake off the guards escorting us, and using our new warlock and wizard abilities, seamlessly sneak through these enemies and towards the sort of central area of Everlight Grove. Once there, we come upon a strange scene. There is a progression of myconoids and these fungal zombie people heading towards the central area in this sort of procession, almost like a wedding. And who do we see leading said procession but the massive Demon Lord herself, Zuggtmoy, at which point we realize that Everlight Grove has fallen to the demon's power as well. We are spotted, as happens, and after a failed persuasion check, Nazgul for the first time fails a sanity check, and this would not be the last. I'm going to go ahead and say it now. I mentioned before how there was a new score for Out of the Abyss, sanity. Over the course of his run, Nazgul failed every sanity check he ever made. So let's keep that in mind as we continue the story. So fails that check, becomes terrified for a while. Fight breaks out. We get in this big fight, get to show off cool new warlock powers and wizard powers from my new necromancer buddy, and we managed to escape. Unfortunately, this was part of the campaign in which I was busy outside of the game, so I actually missed quite a few sessions in between from game to game. So I'm a bit hazy on the details as what happened after our escape. But down the line, when I came back, I found out that my necromancer buddy did in fact get killed by this big mosquito demon. So that was disappointing. Tell you what, before I continue on, let me actually point out some other cool things that happened with the situation at Everlight Grove, because this would become a place that we come back to, and we have to actually did some cool fights in. So basically, the area completely around the area, you got these different NPCs and such that have been affected by these spores. One such NPC was actually in our party and was one of the ones who really wanted us to get Stool back to Everlight Grove. This NPC, I forgot which one it was. There was a lot of NPCs in this adventure. Once we get there, we discovered that he himself was actually infected by Zuggtmoy's spores. And so once we got there, his task complete, his head just kind of explodes and became one of the zombies that we were fighting. After we escaped, I realized now that I actually skipped audio. So after we escaped, we actually met up with the few myconoids who have not been corrupted by Zuggtmoy's power. Some particularly large ones, in fact, even. So they explained to us what's going on with Zuggtmoy trying to take over the place through a particularly large creature that lives in Everlight Grove. This sort of massive collective of mushrooms and fungus that acts as sort of the heart of Everlight Grove. A massive creature. From their telling of it, we don't know. We never really found out for sure if it was true, but we had few reason to disagree with it. This creature was probably one of the largest living creatures on the material plane, and Zuggtmoy had the goal of her way of looking at it was marrying said creature, but in reality it was, using demonic spores to possess and control said creature, and then use that creature to spread her rot all across the material plane. So obviously bad stuff. We would find out later on that Zuggtmoy's rival was actually also had stakes with this creature. The Demon Lord of Oozes, Ubelex, had a similar goal, his being to consume this creature to basically just gain the mass necessary to begin consuming the entire material plane. So bad situations in either case. We would later on fight these two, though, and bring a stop to that. But that's a story for another time. So with those Mechanoids' help, we escaped Everlight Grove. Necromancer dies sometime later. I wasn't there for it. I'm sorry. And we continue our adventures. Our adventures eventually bring us to the Duragoras City in the Underdark, not too far away from the Underdome that they would travel to later on. Actually, very soon at this point. I'll be honest. I'm skipping kind of around a bit here because, truth be told, between me missing a lot of games at this point in the story and a lot of the travel we were doing there wasn't quite as many crazy things happening in between these sort of major locations. But what had happened between these major locations is time after time, Nazgul would attempt to make these sanity checks whenever we encounter these terrible demons and horrible sights, and time again, he would fail. By the time we actually reached the Duragoras City, his sanity had dropped to an 8, giving it a negative modifier, which was really draining him, both like mentally and even I as a player was starting to get a bit drugged down by like, man, he just keeps failing, you know? So an interesting thing with that came to be is actually as the campaign went on, the DM would sometimes send text messages to individual players. And it was then the player's choice if they wanted to keep it secret or tell the others about it. In particular, this message that Nazgul received was from a demon lord. So you see, one of the demon lords, as is sort of the recurring theme in this adventure, is already present in this major location. This one being Orcus, the demon lord of undead. Now, I was actually told later that had our Necromancer not been dead, he likely also would have been contacted, but he was dead, so that was a bit out the window. So, Nazgul, time and time again, he has failed, and also has, at this point, in a number of instances, actually butted heads with the party's paladin. You know, he's a redemption paladin, I'm an undying warlock. We kind of butt heads on how to deal with the enemies we fight. Nazgul's main focus being, hey, let's kill these dudes and then make them useful to us, you know, as undead and such. And of course, Paladin's just not having it. So during our travels, he is later contacted by Orcus in his dreams, offering him power and status. Oh, hello. Well, hello. Thank you for the compliment. One second. Okay, where was I? Alright, so we were traveling to the city. Orcus was contacting Nazgul. So Orcus contacts him, offering him status and power and basically everything an evil character would want. He, having been driven totally insane by all of his sanity checks, pretty much agrees immediately, and so begins to concoct a terrible plan with the help of Orcus. Before we reached the city, we actually ended up traveling through this dungeon where we met one of my favorite characters from Out of the Abyss. I gotta try to remember his name. I say he's my favorite character, but it's hard for me to remember the names. There's just so many NPCs in this adventure. It was... What was it? Glabagul, that was it. His name was Glabagul. So Glabagul, we met in a dungeon, and almost ran into him, but Nazgul was able to contact it because one of the warlock abilities I picked was being able to talk telepathically with people. So he was able to speak with this ooze that we encountered in this dungeon. In particular, this was a gelatinous cube. This gelatinous cube, unlike others, was sentient. It was able to talk to us, and was honestly a pretty chill and cool dude, actually leading us through the dungeon, though he got confused at times as he would try to lead us through these small cracks in the wall, not realizing that we cannot do that. But he was a lot of fun. He was a very fun character that we a lot of interesting conversations with, and was actually surprisingly helpful in fights as we would kind of grapple enemies and just kind of throw them into Glabberghoul. He was a lot of fun to have with us, especially when we were encountering enemies who had like damaging effects that like would hurt us if we were close to it. We would just kind of knock him into Glabberghoul and just kind of take care of the problem, as he would just kind of dissolve and eat them. He was a lot of fun. I actually got a pretty cool weapon out of him too, as the only reason we knew he was there initially and didn't run into him was because he had a weapon floating inside of him. This weapon was a torchlit mace, which doesn't do a lot of crazy stuff, but has a very cool aesthetic, and also is, you know, kind of a free torch. So it's like win-win, really. I ended up using that weapon. Yeah, so out of that dungeon led by Glabberghoul, we left him outside the city because obviously people would be a bit upset with this slime wandering around and accidentally eating people. So we travel into the city, and we are told, and we meet up with various people there. There are these Duragar assassins who are after us in the city because they're working. If I recall correctly, I think they were working with the Drow, which was kind of surprising to all of us. No, it wasn't. He was working with the Drow. It's with he was driven insane by the demons as well, and the demons wanted us dead because we were being annoying. Basically, was really honestly kind of the gist of that one. So we travel into this city, and we did actually a lot of stuff here. This is one of the few cities we actually came to that we didn't immediately. The people there didn't try to, like, you know, enslave us immediately. So we actually were able to do some shopping and such and buy some new equipment, which we were all kind of heading for. As a sort of campaign, you start with a very scarce amount of equipment. And with all the travel, we were using kind of the travel mechanics as well. So we had to keep up with, like, rations and stuff. So the city was a very welcome change that allowed us to restock our supplies. Well, there we actually met with these stone giants who were part of sort of a very chill order of people within the city who were just very focused on sort of maintaining order and all that good very, very good, mostly neutral characters like to do. And so they kind of helped lead us around the city, and we actually eventually come upon, during our travels, a red dragon. This very large and, as DM would describe them, obese dragon. This dragon was fat. I mean, thick, fat dragon. Yeah, red dragon too, by the way. So yeah, he was not pleasant to speak with. Very evil and full of himself. So the dragon tells the giant to hand us over. This giant seems to know this dragon and explains to us that this dragon basically runs the city. Like he's not like actually in charge, technically, but he provides fire that fuels like all the forges in the city and all the lights and all that good stuff. And so he doesn't run it, but he runs it, sort of a Who Runs Gastown situation, you know, if you're familiar with Mad Max, the older movie in particular. One of the older movies. I think it's like the third movie, I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, so the dragon drags us off to his lair. Like I said, we were probably level 5 or 6 at this point, so this ancient red dragon was not something for us to fight, that was for damn sure. And this red dragon starts getting Nazgul's gears a turning, because this dragon was actually part of the plan that Orcus wanted his help with. You see, this dragon... Wait, you know what? I keep saying Orcus. Was it Orcus? Orcus is the undead one, right? One second. Let me consult my book. The book of the D&D stuff. Got my books at my desk to help me remember these sorts of things. Orcus. Professor Blue, Demogorgon. No. Baphomet. Pictures of Octomoi. Nope. Blah. One second. I'll find it. Do you like those page turning? Isn't that Demon Prince of... Yes, it was Orcus. Demon Prince of Undeath. Orcus. Scary dude, by the way. One of his look it up if you want. His design is pretty scary looking, honestly. I don't know, something about it. It's creepy. It's very creepy. Anywho's it. So Orcus wants to kill this red dragon and turn it into a Draco Lich, which is basically just a big undead dragon. So he starts kind of working out that plan while the dragon tells us what it wants us to do. The dragon explains to us that the people in charge of taking care of him and his big palace he lives in stole away an egg that had been birthed of him, I guess. I don't know. It's like the dragon was male, so I guess at some point there's a female dragon. We never saw her, so I guess she just wasn't relevant enough to still be there, but relevant enough to have laid an egg. But so he wanted us to go retrieve said egg from some nearby caves that it got stashed in. We figured it wanted its kid back, but we find out later that wasn't the plan. Yeah. So we go traveling through these caves in search of the egg. Along the way, we run into quite a bit of issues. First one being that when encountered with dungeons with lots of twisting paths, our party in particular gets lost very easily as we kind of overload with the information and get confused as to what paths went where. So both in and out of game, we were very confused at this point. During our travels, we actually had another party member die in those caves, if I recall. They were killed by a water weird that basically drowned them. I can't remember which character that was, though, because we just ran through so many characters over the course of this campaign. Nevertheless, we eventually managed to reach the central chamber of said cave, which was this big central room that had the egg within it. We retrieve it from a bunch of undead that were guarding it, which we thought was weird. Well, I mean, the rest of the party thought it was weird. I didn't, because I knew what was going on in secret. And we managed to kill the undead, retrieve the egg. Nearly being killed by a Bodak along the way, but we chose the better of two options in this situation and ran away from it. We weren't ready for that. So we ferry the egg back to the dragon. Dragon thanks us and promptly smashes the egg. We all look in shock, but are explained to that if it was to hatch, it would basically take his place, and he didn't want that, so he killed it before it ever had the chance. So we spend a little bit more time in the city. During said time, he tells us about how he's pretty sure some of his followers in his palace are looking to betray him. I, of course, already know this, because I am one of said people wanting to kill him. And unfortunately, it is fair to point out that our Necromancer player, who had his character died a little while back at this point, was now playing a Kobold, and as such was pretty much completely infatuated and was down to basically just do whatever the dragon wanted. The dragon, of course, cared nothing of his existence, though, so it's kind of sad to watch, to be honest. So the dragon hires us to find out the traitors in his midst. Now, it's cool. Wanting to take advantage of the situation. Gets the party to help him, let him kind of take the lead on the investigation, as he, too, being a Githyanki and technically an ally of Red Dragons, thought he could kind of make friends with him, though he did find out that this dragon cared nothing about those old ancient politics, so that didn't really even amount to anything, but it was still just some character reason to kind of take the lead on things, which was enough to trick the party at the very least. So they find the chamber in which the traitors are talking. They, of course, don't speak common, but taking advantage of the situation, Nazgul cast tongues on them so that they can understand him, and claiming that he simply wishes to speak in his native tongue, chooses to speak in Gith, a language that the people he just cast tongues on would be able to understand, but nobody else in the party would be able to understand. So he convinces them that he himself is also working with Orcus, which is what we discover that these people are doing, those servants of Orcus, looking to poison and kill the dragon, which they've been slowly doing over time at this point. So he convinces them that he wishes to help, and they give him the poison. The party doesn't know what he's doing, but he tricks them and says, "Hey, just follow me. I'm gonna go talk to the dragon. I figured out what's going on. He likes me and the Kobold, so we'll go talk to him." This obviously was a lie, but the party, but being a warlock with high charisma, I could be a bit persuasive. So we travel to the dragon. We get there. I'll pretty much immediately oust the other cultists, because if I'm going to betray everyone and work for a demon lord, I'm at least going to be his number one. So I oust the other cultists, and the dragon stomps off to go incinerate and kill them. At which point, I then use my telepathic powers to contact him and also explain to him that the rest of the party is also seeking to betray him. So he starts stomping down the hall and chasing after the rest of the party, who, confused as to what is going on and why he's so angry, choose the only obvious situation, the only reasonable option in the situation, and start to run away. Because of my use of spells, I'm now down on 1 spell slot, and quickly, while the dragon is away, douse his food in the poison. As I said, this dragon was obese, he eats a lot, so I just douse all of his food in the poison. Kobold is with me at this time, and is really confused and is demanding for me to tell him what's going on. I know that there's no convincing this Kobold, who's already proven himself to be completely taken with this dragon, that he should help me in this situation. So, I draw my sword and I strike him. Of course, we're on one player attacking another player, and so he, of course, does not die right away. So keep in mind here, we have Githyanki, Undying Warlock versus a Kobold Rogue. If I recall, he was the Assassin Rogue, I think. No, I think he was the Thief Rogue, actually. I forget which type of rogue he was, but he was a rogue. So we get into this very interesting fight that basically consists of me standing in the middle of the room so I could see the edges of the area. The entire edges of the room were lined with like these piles of treasure. So the Kobold player would go and dive into the treasure on his turn and hide, and then kind of swim around in the treasure. He has very high dex. I had low perception, so he would successfully hide. He would charge out of the pile on his next turn, stab me, but on my turn, I would prepare an action to attack him with Eldritch Blast or my swords whenever he came in range and was spotted. So we went to this cat and mouse game of he would hide, hit me, and I would immediately hit him in return. It was this very tense back and forth that lasted about 3 rounds before I realized it was close, but I was going to lose the fight. So, using that last spell slot I've been holding onto, I run out into the hallway and cast a teleportation spell and disappear down the hall. And that was the point in which Nazgul left the party and became one of the new villains of this campaign. The Kobold player and the other player managed to meet up with the other players. They all reconvene away from the palace, and the Kobold explains to the rest of the party what Nazgul has done. I'll go ahead and tell you how Nazgul's story ends. It was actually, so over the course of this adventure, because there was just so much cool content he wanted to cover, the DM at this time, he really squeezed this campaign for everything it was worth. Like, it took us like a year and a half to actually complete this campaign for that reason, actually. To the point in which there were times in which we actually weren't even playing as our actual characters. He would have us take the role of some of the other NPCs in the Underdark and play as them, so we could also explore some of the other sort of side adventures that were happening around the Underdark without having to actually travel there as the main group, which would take a lot of time. Which was a lot of fun, but at times I would just kind of want to see what's going on with the main group, as those were the characters we had the most investment in. But if nothing else, we did get to see some really cool stories as a result. So it was later on, one of those NPC groups traveled back to the Durago city, at which point, oh, thank you for the follow, got a new follower. Hello, and thank you. So it was at this point, one of these NPC groups travels to the city, and actually would encounter Nazgul, now very creepy and decrepit looking, and discover that he is working for, not only working for Orcus, but has tricked the dragon completely into believing he is basically his only loyal follower. Even though he's actually been poisoning him slowly over time. So by the time the party gets there, he has actually successfully poisoned and killed said dragon using a ritual conducted by Orcus, and has successfully not only resurrected him as a Draco Lich, but fused his soul with the dragon. So now him and this dragon are as one, and I don't know why the DM chose this name. I don't know if it's what it was in the book. Just thought of a character idea. A Warforged mech with a miniature shark in it, pirating it. So like the shark is the actual character, and the Warforged is like a mech. Is that what you're saying? Interesting. Anyways, so if I recall, the dragon was called, oh, okay, gotcha. The dragon was called Ragnarok. I don't know if that's what the book called it or the DM made up. I honestly, there came to a point, I don't know what bits of the story were like in the book and what bits the DM made up. I couldn't tell, which probably means he was doing a good job. And also point out, obviously at this point, I was not playing as Nazgul anymore. Nazgul was completely a villain at this point under the DM's control. He would occasionally let me kind of make input as things he would do, but for the most part, what he would do at this point, because he was, batshit insane now, was kill people, make zombies. So they have this big fight with the dragon. They kill it. Favorite homebrew I've ever made? If you mean like classes and races, I actually don't really use homebrewed classes or races much, because a lot of times I find that they're not very well balanced or don't fit in the setting that the DM's created. Not to talk bad about homebrew characters, but like that. But it's just one of my personal read. A lot of times they just don't fit very well in a already made setting. Now, if you made it during, like, say, a session 0 and you had plenty of time to talk it out with the DM, then I feel like that works fine. But I've never really been driven myself to actually go that route, because usually there's like just a lot of, especially with all these new supplement books to come out with, a lot of times the quote unquote official stuff posted is interesting enough to kind of hold my attention. So I haven't really used any homebrewed races or classes before, actually. But so that does actually bring it to about the end of Nazgul's end of the story. In the form of Ragnarok, he is struck down by this other party, and the Duergar city is saved. Yay! Though, since it's a Duergar city in the Underdark, it doesn't get better necessarily. It still kind of sucks. But a major enemy of ours is taken out, and Orcus, though not killed, at the very least, his plans are stalled and stopped for the time being. And so that brings it to the end of Nazgul's story from Out of the Abyss. So that's about the gist of it. I'll probably be doing another one of these sometime next week or the week after, just kind of, as time allows. But yeah. One second, thirsty. I don't know. I guess like questions, comments, other D&D related topics, anything. I'll probably be ending this pretty soon. Yeah, this one's actually a little bit longer than the stories usually are. No, actually no, not by much. I just had the clock wrong. Yep. So all in all, I'd say that brings this story time to an end. Thank you guys for watching. I'm glad to see that some people do have an interest in this sort of thing. Seeing at least a few people stop in every time I do one. So that's really nice. That makes me feel happy. Thank you very much. And thank you again for following Electrodon, new follower. So I thank you guys for stopping by and listening to my stories. The next time I'll be doing this, the next time I'll talk about one of my favorite characters I played from Out of the Abyss. which was actually a sorcerer I played. So that'll be fun. And I guess before I go, to follow up on your question, it's like, I immediately assumed you meant like homebrew class or race, but if you just meant like character in general I made, my favorite character was actually a trickery domain cleric named Lokeen. He was one of my longest living characters, almost hitting level 20 even, and was like a party favorite. Like he was pretty much great at every role. Like he had all of the best spells the cleric had, in my opinion. Like lots of AoE kind of area control type stuff. He once polymorphed a giant into a fish, then threw said fish off a mountain, which became kind of a running joke for a while during that campaign. You know what? That's probably a story I should tell you guys sometime. I should tell you guys about Lokeen sometime, actually. So yeah, Lokeen was actually, there's plenty of stuff I could tell you about him. So next time I might actually take a break from Out of the Abyss and tell you about Lokeen Skamos. My still favorite character that I've played to date, actually. So actually, yeah, I think we'll do that the next time I do one of these. So yeah, I'll still get my notes together on that one. So I'll actually save that story for another time then. And I'll go ahead and end this one here. So thank you guys again for watching. My voice kind of keeps cracking because my throat's a little dry. I'm sorry. I hope to see you guys in the next time, and I hope you yourselves can have some fun D&D adventures here and there. And I wish you all safe travels. Bye.